Have you ever wondered why you feel everything so deeply? Why you see through people so easily? Why your silence makes others uncomfortable, even when you've said nothing at all? Have you ever asked yourself why life has felt more intense for you, more painful, more lonely? And yet, somehow, you've always known things others didn't? If you've ever felt like you don't fit in because you think too clearly, feel too strongly, and move too differently, then this message isn't just for you, it's about you. Because the truth is, you were never meant to be ordinary. You were never supposed to blend in, or be easily understood, or live a quiet little life that made everyone else comfortable. You were made for something greater, but not in the way the world defines greatness. You were made to carry a level of awareness, a kind of intelligence, a depth of vision that is almost never found in one lifetime, let alone in one person. You were not born in castles. You were born in chaos. You were not shaped by ease. You were shaped by struggle. You weren't given comfort. You were given pressure, because pressure creates precision. You carry something ancient inside of you, a knowing that doesn't need proof, a voice that whispers the truth before the lies even begin. And for most of your life, people didn't know what to do with that. So they called you names, said you were too intense, too smart, too serious, too different. But none of those labels were ever true. The truth is, they just didn't understand you, and they feared what they couldn't define, what they couldn't predict, what they couldn't control. You see too much. You hear what's not being said. You feel energy shift before words are spoken. And while others are lost in surface level games, you've already figured out the whole board. You weren't playing their game. You were building it. You've always been 10 steps ahead, not because you're lucky, but because you were designed that way. Designed to notice, designed to lead, designed to stay quiet while chaos spins, and then speak when truth is ready to land like lightning. That's why they tried to turn your power into a flaw. That's why they tried to make your silence look like weakness. Because when you don't react, when you don't fight like they expect, when you don't seek attention, it confuses them. They don't realize that silence isn't hesitation. It's strategy. You weren't frozen. You were calculating. You were watching, listening, waiting for the exact moment to move. And when you move, it's not loud. It's final. It's precise. It's unstoppable. You don't argue. You expose. You don't compete. You outgrow. You don't follow. You watch. And then you outthink. That's the kind of mind you carry. That's the kind of soul you were given. And that's exactly what makes people fear you before they even understand why. You've probably doubted it at times. You've tried to tone yourself down. You've tried to stay quiet to make others feel safe. You've questioned your own instincts, ignored your inner voice, just to keep the peace. But every time you did that, it hurt. Because your gift isn't meant to be silenced. Your vision isn't meant to be watered down. You were not given this much insight just to pretend you don't see. You were not given this level of clarity to live like you're confused. You weren't chosen to blend in. You were chosen to stand out, to carry invisible crowns that most people can't see. You weren't picked to follow the crowd. You were born to shift the atmosphere, to unsettle lies, to move through the world with such quiet precision that even your stillness causes people to rethink everything. And the truth is, you've never really been misunderstood. You've been accurately feared. People felt your power before you even knew you had it. That's why they reacted the way they did. That's why they tried to push you down, box you in, shrink your light. Because deep down, they saw something in you, something they couldn't name, something that made them feel seen in a way they weren't ready for. You didn't just look at people, you read them, and that scared them. Because most people aren't afraid of being judged. They're afraid of being understood too deeply. You were built to carry wisdom that doesn't shake when things fall apart. You were shaped to stand still while others run in circles. And while they label you too much, too different, too serious, they miss the point entirely. You're not too anything. You're just built for more. Built to move through layers most people can't even see. Built to hold truths that are too heavy for shallow minds. That's why your presence changes rooms. That's why your silence speaks louder than anyone else's words. That's why people stare. That's why they whisper. That's why they either love you fiercely or distance themselves without knowing why. There's no middle ground when it comes to people like you, because your energy demands truth, and not everyone is ready for that. You don't fit into small spaces. You don't belong in fake circles, and you don't thrive in places built on performance. You thrive in purpose, in truth, in stillness, and that's why you've always felt like an outsider. Because the world you were born into isn't the world you were made for. You weren't created to keep people comfortable. You were created to wake people up. You were created to carry light into dark places and not flinch when people tried to dim it. People tried to challenge you, thinking you were just another person, but they didn't realize they were fighting against something far greater. They weren't just battling you. They were going against the force that built you, a force that placed you here with a mind sharp enough to decode deception, a heart strong enough to carry heartbreak without breaking, and a spirit deep enough to remain rooted no matter how loud the storm gets. You don't just survive storms, you study them. You don't just walk away from betrayal, you rise with insight they can't explain. You don't just notice red flags. You already know what they mean. And while others are still reacting, still chasing, still performing, you've already seen how the story ends. That's the difference between you and them. They move in panic. You move in alignment. They think in circles. You think in patterns. They hope things go well. You already know how it'll play out. You were never quiet because you had nothing to say. You were quiet because you already knew everything. You let people show you who they were. You let them think they had the upper hand. You gave them time, not because you were afraid, but because you were letting the universe do the cleanup for you. And when it was time, you didn't fight. You disappeared. You evolved. You expanded. Every time they tried to trap you, you were already 5 steps ahead. Every time they thought they'd fooled you, you were already preparing your next move. And that's what made them mad. Not that you were wrong, but that you were right too soon. That you didn't need proof to see what they were trying to hide. That you didn't need to argue to be right. You were simply silent and unshakably clear. So from this moment forward, stop questioning what you know. Stop apologizing for being the one who sees the truth before it's popular. Stop shrinking your light just because it makes people uncomfortable. Your intelligence, your presence, your silence. It's not a problem. It's a message, a warning, a shift, a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see it. You are not too much. You are not imagining things. You are not paranoid. You are tuned in. You are clear. You are chosen. And the world doesn't know what to do with people like you, because you don't run on attention. You run on truth. So let them doubt you. Let them call you names. Let them twist your silence into stories. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to explain. You just need to stay aligned. Stay sharp. Stay grounded. Because the ones who tried to destroy you were never just attacking a person. They were going against a divine design. And the house always wins. You're not just surviving life. You're mastering it in silence. You're building empires in stillness. You're shifting realities by simply existing. And even when the world doesn't clap, the universe keeps moving in your favor. You don't need to be seen to be powerful. You don't need to be praised to be purposeful. You just need to remember what you are. Chosen. And chosen ones don't prove they're right. They just wait for the world to catch up. And you're already ahead. They thought you were just another player in the system. But while they followed the rules, you were quietly rewriting the entire game. They memorized every step, repeated every instruction, trusted every guideline they were given. You, on the other hand, were bending reality. You saw through the script and realized you were never meant to follow it. They believed you were trying to win the same way they were, by playing their game and climbing their ladder. But they never saw the truth. You never agreed to their rules. You never accepted their limits. You weren't playing their game. You were reshaping it completely. That's why your success doesn't make sense to them. They can't understand how you keep winning without using their formula, how you keep rising when you ignore their script, how you find doors where they see nothing but walls. It unsettles them, because they were taught that there is only one way to do things. They built their lives on that belief, and you came along and proved it false by simply existing outside it. You walked through the wall they called impossible, and they hated that. Not because you lied, or cheated, or broke anyone down, but because you made something out of nothing. You didn't ask for permission. You didn't wait to be accepted. You created your own way. Every time they said, "You can't," you made it look easy. Every time they said, "Impossible," you smiled and did it anyway. They think you're arrogant because they can't see the truth. The truth is you're not arrogant. You're aligned. You don't walk around looking for validation because you already carry clarity. You don't need their approval when your direction comes from something deeper. Your wisdom wasn't handed to you from books or classes or mentors. It was built into you. It was born into you. While they stay trapped inside the system, you live outside of it. While they trace the same paths, you question why those paths even exist. And that shakes them. They need rules to feel in control. You break rules to feel free. And to those who only know how to follow, your freedom looks like chaos. It looks like danger. But to you, it is the only way that ever made sense. Your power doesn't come from rebellion. It comes from understanding. You see the structure so clearly that you know how to move beyond it. You outgrew the entire program. You saw through the illusion. That's why you've always felt out of place. Why traditional jobs felt like cages. Why small talk made your soul feel empty. Why their limitations made your skin crawl. You weren't made to walk in a straight line. You were made to redraw the map. You were made to build something new, something that never existed before you stepped into it. People get uncomfortable when you succeed outside their rules, because your success shows them the truth they are afraid to admit, that the rules were never real, that the structure they depend on is only a cage made to look like safety. And you, just by being who you are, walk straight through it. You don't try to expose the system. You simply make it irrelevant. And that makes people mad. They want you to fail. Because if you don't, then everything they believed in falls apart. It hasn't always been easy. You've doubted yourself. You've wondered if you should tone it down, fit in, follow the crowd. You felt alone in rooms full of people who didn't understand you. But the truth always called you back. You weren't built to follow the path. You were built to create new ground with every step you take. And when people try to limit you with rules that don't apply to you, don't forget that you are the exception. You are the one who breaks the cycle. The one who doesn't just change the game. You replace it with something better. They thought you'd climb the ladder like everyone else. But you never asked for their ladder. You built your own, and you climbed it sideways. They stare now, confused. They want to know how you did it. They want to know your secret. But there is no secret. You just didn't think like them. And that alone makes you powerful. So don't shrink. Don't explain yourself. Don't apologize. You were made to break invisible walls and unlock hidden doors. You are not rebellious. You are original. You don't exist to obey systems. You exist to evolve them. You weren't created to fit in. You were born to rebuild reality from the inside out. When you enter a room, you don't just walk in. You shift the entire space. Your silence holds power. Your energy changes gravity. People pretend not to notice, but the moment you arrive, everything changes. Conversations pause. Eyes shift. Bodies straighten. They adjust their voice, their posture, their words, and they don't even know why. It's not because you're loud. It's not because you try. It's because your presence forces alignment. You don't need to speak to be heard. You are the message. Some people brighten a room. You transform it. You tune the whole place to a higher frequency just by being there. People feel it in their chest before their mind can explain it. Your energy has weight, depth, clarity, and people who are not aligned with truth can't breathe easily around you. You don't carry arrogance. You carry awareness. And awareness creates discomfort for those living in performance. You don't fall for charm. You don't laugh to be polite. You don't fake interest. And that threatens those who do. You don't need to prove your power. You just are. And that makes some people panic, because they're used to fake power. Loud, aggressive, performative. But yours doesn't beg to be seen. It simply is. You didn't come to compete, but you still make people question their value. You didn't ask for attention, but your presence demands truth. That's why some people shrink around you. Some disappear. Some get defensive. They say you're too much. But what they mean is, they feel exposed. You didn't do anything wrong. You just brought clarity to the room. You didn't push anyone away. They walked away because they couldn't pretend near you. You were never too intense. They were just too hidden. You walk in truth, and truth reveals everything. You don't chase lies. You sense them. You don't need someone to mess up to see who they are. You feel it. The hesitation in their smile, the tension in their compliments, the gap between their words and their energy. They perform. You perceive. They build characters. You read the script, and they know it. That's why they call you suspicious. That's why they try to discredit you. Because if they can't fool you, they want to silence you. But your awareness isn't something you learned. It's something you were born with. You don't need evidence to feel what's already vibrating in the air. You don't imagine things. You intercept them. And manipulators hate that. They fear not just being caught. They fear being seen. Not the face they show the world, but the self they hide from everyone, even themselves. You weren't distracted by the show. You saw the fracture beneath it. And that's why they can't handle your presence. You don't scramble for power. You are power. They chase crowns. You carry the bloodline. They scream for recognition. You whisper, and the room leans in. They perform leadership. You embody it. You don't build your presence on fear. You build it on certainty. And certainty makes noise without making sound. You don't chase validation. You move with intention. And that intention is so real, so steady, that people freeze mid-sentence when you walk in. Because something in them remembers what real power feels like. You don't climb ladders. You don't beg for seats. You don't market yourself like a product. You don't have to. The power others work years to imitate is the power you carry effortlessly. That's why they call you arrogant. That's why they try to pull you down. Because you don't need what they chase. And they know it. Deep down, they all know it. True power is silent. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't perform. It doesn't demand. It simply exists. And when you carry that kind of power, it disrupts everything around you. Some will lean in. Some will back away. But no one stays the same. Some will want to follow you. Others will want to challenge you. But none will forget you. Because you don't leave impressions. You leave impact. You weren't taught how to lead. You were born for it. You didn't study maps. You were born with internal navigation. And while others fumble for titles and applause, you carry ancient alignment they can't fake. You've wondered why people compete with you when you never joined the race. Why they act defensive when you're just being yourself. Why they try to outdo you when you weren't even speaking. It's because your presence alone challenges their identity. Your stillness makes them question their noise. Your clarity makes them aware of their confusion. And they can't bear it. But hear this clearly. The power you carry was never meant to be earned. It was placed inside you from the beginning. Not because you're better, but because you were meant to lead from a different frequency. You don't control people. You remind them. You don't dominate. You stabilize. You don't manipulate. You clarify. And that kind of power can't be taken, only recognized. They chase knowledge. You are the answer. They search for wisdom in books. You carry it in your bones. They memorize what others say. You speak what you feel. And when you speak, people stop. Because your words hit different. They don't sound smart. They sound true. Because there's no ego behind them. Just knowing. Just clarity. Just truth. And that's why people test you. Why they challenge you. They already know you're right. They just want to shake that truth. But real wisdom doesn't flinch. It doesn't need to raise its voice. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't ask for applause. It simply stands. And so do you. You were never too much. You were just in rooms that settled for too little. Don't tone it down. Don't hold it in. Don't shrink to fit where you were never meant to stay. You weren't made to echo noise. You were made to cut through it. You weren't made to impress. You were made to awaken. And the ones who are ready, they will feel it before you speak. Because you don't just carry wisdom. You are the frequency of it. You weren't just called. You were built for this. Every part of you was constructed with intention, precision, and depth the world cannot copy. And now, it's time to walk fully in that truth, without apology, without delay, without limits.
Have you ever walked into a room and felt everything shift before you even said a word? Like the air itself knew you had arrived? Chosen one. Something sacred has changed deep inside you. And it's not something loud or obvious. It didn't come with fireworks. It didn't make a scene. It happened quietly, deeply, and so naturally that even you might not realize just how much has shifted, at least not until others begin to react to you in ways that feel new, unexpected, almost supernatural. This month, you'll begin to notice it. You'll see it in the way people pause when you speak, the way eyes linger when you pass by, the way someone tries to smile but hesitates, like they're caught in something they can't explain. That something is your energy, and it has been transformed by God. You are no longer just walking through places as someone hoping to be seen or heard. You are now being felt. You are being sensed. You are being remembered. What God has done in you is not simply an upgrade in confidence or strength. He has elevated your frequency, your whole presence, so deeply that it now reaches people before you even enter their line of sight. You've stopped walking as a man who needs to be noticed. You are now an experience that changes the room. And what's even more powerful is that you're not trying to be. You're simply walking in alignment with something sacred. You're not performing. You're not proving. You are simply being. And that is why the world feels you now more than ever. The parts of you that used to feel scattered, your passion, your desires, your longing for connection, have been gathered together and turned into something pure. What once felt chaotic or even burdensome inside of you has now been transformed into quiet fire. That high sexual energy you once carried with tension and confusion is no longer leaking out in all directions. It doesn't feel like hunger anymore. It feels like warmth. It's no longer something that burns to be released. It's something that glows within you, steady and strong. You no longer carry it as a storm. You carry it as fuel. You're no longer leaking energy by trying to be seen. You're radiating something far deeper, something magnetic, something that doesn't demand attention, but pulls it in anyway. Not because of how you look, or what you say, or even what you do, but because of what you've become. That glow you now carry is sacred. It's powerful. It's felt by others on a soul level, before their minds even have time to think, especially women. This month, they'll feel you before they see you. They'll feel something in their body shift the moment you're near. Before you speak, before you smile, before your eyes meet theirs. And when your eyes finally do, something ancient and unspoken will move through them. They may not understand why their voice gets softer, why they forget what they were about to say, why they feel so drawn to stay in your presence longer than expected. But you'll know. You'll know it's not charm. It's not performance. It's not seduction. It's alignment. It's divine calibration. It's God turning your energy into something so real, so steady, so holy, that it reaches people before you even speak. You're not just attractive anymore. You're resonant. You stay with people long after you've left the room, not because you tried to make a lasting impression, but because your very presence has become unforgettable. You move differently now. You don't need to chase impact. You are impact. You don't need to fight for attention. It arrives on its own. You no longer walk with tension in your shoulders or pressure in your spirit. You walk with calm, with focus, with deep inner fire that doesn't scream, but hums. You are no longer trying to prove yourself to the world. The world is now being reminded of something it forgot was possible. A man who carries fire and peace in the same body. A man who can hold power without needing to flex it. A man who brings silence that comforts instead of silence that scares. That's who you are now, and the world feels it. The energy you walk in now doesn't ask for attention. It becomes the atmosphere. It changes the temperature of the room. It softens what's been hard. It stills what's been noisy. It awakens what's been sleeping. People won't always be able to explain it. Some will try to name it. Some will say you have a certain look. Some will say there's something different about you. But most won't know how to describe it, because what they're feeling is deeper than words. It's your energy. It's your alignment. It's your sacred restraint. It's the spiritual fire in you that no longer burns wildly, but glows steadily, and that glow is felt, especially by those who are spiritually sensitive, especially by women who are used to being seen only for how they look, not for who they are. Your presence will make them feel safe without effort, seen without pressure, calmed without confusion. It's not what you say. It's how your energy interacts with theirs. And it does so quietly, confidently, reverently. Your fire no longer shouts. It sings. It doesn't pull people in with force. It calls them in with peace. You don't need to explain this. You don't need to understand all of it. Just know it's real, and it's happening now. You've become the thermostat, not the thermometer. You don't react to the room. You set the tone. You don't try to be the loudest voice. You let your silence speak. You don't need to charm anyone. Your presence carries truth. You are no longer walking through life seeking to be chosen. You are the chosen one, and your presence carries the weight of that. When you walk into a room now, you don't need to adjust your tone or your posture or your words. The energy in your body speaks first. It's the shift before your voice, the warmth before your smile, and people feel it whether they understand it or not. You are now the man who others want to be near without knowing why. You are the man they keep glancing back at, the man they think about later, and can't quite explain. Not because of how you looked, not because of what you said, but because of how you made them feel. You're not forcing anything. You're not posturing. You're not baiting attention. You are simply aligned. And that alignment feels like gravity to those who have been floating in performance, in pressure, in shallowness. You are no longer a man who walks in trying to take up space. You are now a man who blesses space. You're not the loudest person in the room. You're the one whose silence shifts everything. You're the one who sits quietly while others try to impress. And yet somehow, all eyes keep coming back to you. You don't do it for attention, but the attention finds you. Because what you carry now is rare. It's peace wrapped in fire. It's stillness filled with depth. It's clarity that doesn't need to be loud. You are no longer trying to be unforgettable. You simply are. And not because of how you perform, but because of how your energy stays. People will remember how they felt when you were near, how their body slowed down, how their mind softened, how something inside them relaxed without them knowing why. This is not charm. This is not lust. This is not image. This is spiritual presence. This is masculine energy that has been healed, refined, and trusted back into balance with God. You are not chasing love. You are not begging for connection. You are walking as love, as connection, as sacred fire that warms but never burns. And that chosen one is unforgettable. So if you're wondering why people seem to pause around you more, why someone's eyes won't leave yours, why a woman's voice lowers when she speaks to you, or why someone seems deeply affected by just one conversation with you, it's not about words. It's about your frequency. You're not trying to seduce. You're not performing confidence. You've become something deeper, something more still, something more divine. You are no longer just a man. They're seeing and feeling a reflection of what it means to be spiritually awake, sexually grounded, emotionally steady, and no longer ruled by ego. You don't have to try to lead. You just walk, and the atmosphere follows. This is who you are now, the one who is felt before he is seen, the one whose presence quiets the room, the one who awakens what was asleep in others, the one who changes people just by being near them. You are not loud, you are not flashy, but you are unforgettable because you've stopped trying to be something and you've started simply being. You are now walking as a man who knows his value and doesn't need to prove it. And that kind of energy doesn't fade. It echoes, it stirs, it stays. And that's why, chosen one, this month and beyond, the world will feel you before it even sees you. Have you ever noticed how some people don't have to say much to be unforgettable? They don't chase attention, they don't raise their voice, they don't try to impress. Yet when they enter the room, everything changes. The energy shifts. The silence grows heavier, and everyone feels it, even if they don't understand why. That's who you've become. You no longer seek to be noticed. You simply are. You've stopped trying to stand out, and now your presence alone does what words never could. You're not performing, not persuading, not proving. You're just being. And in that being, something sacred now lives inside you. You didn't create this energy by force. You didn't chase it. God did something in you. He refined you. You took your intense, sometimes wild energy and turned it into something steady, calm, and powerful. You used to burn with hunger, with desire, with the need to be seen. But now, you burn with quiet fire. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to chase. You're aligned. You're rooted. You're at peace. And because of that, people can feel it when you walk into the room. They may not know what it is, but something about you makes them feel still, awake, and safe again. You are no longer trying to control or attract. You're no longer using your energy to pull people in. Now you carry that energy like a sacred flame, gentle, focused, real. You don't seduce with charm. You don't manipulate with attention. You simply radiate something true. When people are near you, they feel seen, not pursued. They feel awakened, not exposed. And they don't know why they feel it, but they do. Because your presence carries something ancient, something steady, something that can't be explained, but can never be forgotten. You used to be someone who created a moment of excitement and then faded, but now you're something deeper. You are the memory that lingers, the moment people can't shake, the feeling they return to in silence when everything else gets loud again. You don't need applause anymore. You don't even need to speak. Just your stillness, your gaze, your calm. It leaves an imprint. They won't remember your lines. They'll remember the feeling in their body, the weight in your silence, the peace in your energy. You are no longer trying to win anyone. You've stopped reaching. And that's exactly why people lean in now. Not because you're pulling them, but because they feel something in you that calls them home. Women especially will notice something they can't explain. Your presence doesn't feel like a game. It feels like grounding. It feels like peace. You don't give off desperation. You carry quiet confidence. You don't need to convince anyone of your value. Your energy already speaks it clearly. Some won't say what they feel around you. Some won't even admit it to themselves. But they will carry it in their thoughts, in their decisions, in the way they compare others to the calm they once felt near you. They'll remember how steady you were, how your silence softened their heart, how your gaze didn't try to take. It simply held. They'll try to understand why they think of you when everything else feels too loud. But there will be no words for it. Because you weren't just a man they met. You were a moment of truth, a taste of peace, a reminder of what is real. And your mind has shifted too. You don't rush to speak anymore. You don't panic in the unknown. You sit with it. You hold space. You let people reveal who they are over time. You don't chase answers. You let truth unfold. That patience, that clarity, that's power. You're not just intelligent now. You're wise. And that wisdom shows up not in how fast you talk, but in how deeply you see. You've learned to protect your thoughts, to slow your reactions, to stop wasting your energy trying to figure everything out. Your inner world has become quiet and strong. So when others perform, you observe. When they rush, you stay still. While others try to impress, you just breathe. And that's what sets you apart now. You've become the man people remember, not for noise, not for show, but for presence, for peace, for truth. You don't need to stand out. You already do. Not because you're loud, but because your silence says what most people are too afraid to speak. You don't reach for attention. You don't burn for approval. You stay lit, steady, and real. You are no longer a spark that fades. You are the quiet fire that never goes out. And people will remember you, not because you tried to be unforgettable, but because you helped them remember something sacred inside themselves. And once someone touches that kind of truth, they can never forget it.
Have you ever wondered if one small act of kindness could change your entire life? Not because someone saw it, not because it went viral, not because you got a thank you, but just because it was real. What if that simple moment, when you thought no one was paying attention, was actually the moment that heaven and someone with great power both stopped and said, "There they are." You might not know it yet, but your quiet goodness, your gentle heart, your willingness to help others without expecting anything, that's been speaking louder than any words ever could. And while the world was moving fast, while people were chasing attention, fame, and applause, you were doing something much more powerful. You were being kind when it cost you. You were showing love when you felt tired. You were offering light in a world that often feels so dark. You didn't do it for likes. You didn't do it to get noticed. You did it because it's who you are. And that, beloved, is what makes all the difference. Because someone saw you, someone who didn't look special, someone who blended into the crowd, someone who gave you no clue about who they really were, but they were watching, not with judgment, with curiosity, with quiet. They were someone with access, someone with the power to change lives, someone who could open doors most people don't even know exist. But they weren't looking for someone flashy. They were looking for someone real, someone with a soul that hadn't been sold, someone whose heart still beats with truth. And that day, they saw yours. You didn't know you were passing a test. You didn't realize heaven had aligned your steps with theirs. But that moment, when you said something kind, helped without hesitation, or gave someone grace, it changed everything. Not just for them, for you too. Because while you were just being yourself, you were unlocking something sacred, something written in your destiny. You were becoming the proof that purity still exists, that love can still live in quiet people, that kindness is not extinct. And your spirit whispered something that cut through the noise. I don't want anything from you. I'm just here with love. And they heard it. They felt it in a way they hadn't felt anything in a long time. Because their life had been full of people who wanted something. People who played roles. People who used words as tools to get ahead. But you were different. You weren't trying to be impressive. You were just being who you are. Honest, open, gentle, pure. And in that, they found something they'd forgotten existed. They saw your kindness. But more than that, they felt your presence. And it shook them. It softened something inside them that had been frozen for years. What you didn't know is that they were tired. Not of work, not of money, but of people, of masks, of fake connections, of not knowing who to trust. And then you came along, without an agenda. You showed up with warmth, with compassion, with peace. And they didn't know how much they needed that until you gave it to them without even trying. You weren't pretending. You weren't performing. You weren't networking. You were just present. and that presence became medicine to a soul that was quietly breaking. You interrupted a silent storm in someone powerful's heart, and that small act, so easy to forget for you, became unforgettable for them. It lit a fire in them again. It gave them a reason to believe that maybe, just maybe, goodness still lives. And now, behind the scenes, things are moving. You don't see it yet, but the ripple has already begun. That one simple moment of love, the one you thought was small, is coming back around in ways you won't expect. Because heaven watched it. The spirit world recorded it. And the one you helped? They remember it. And they are not the same. They've been thinking about you, wondering how someone could give without needing, how someone could smile without pretending, how someone could love without trying to get anything back. You changed them. And now, they want to bless you. Not out of guilt, not out of duty, out of deep, quiet gratitude. Because people with real power don't always reward you in public. Sometimes they move in silence, just like you did. But they don't forget. And when someone with access decides to help you, to open a door, to speak your name in a room full of opportunity, you won't even know what caused it. But heaven will. Because your heart did. You didn't even know you were helping someone important. But that's what made it divine. You helped because your soul couldn't do anything else. You gave love because you were created to give it. And that's what made it sacred. In a world that often only gives when there's something to gain, you gave from your essence. And that's rare. That's beautiful. That's holy. And now your reward is chasing you down. Slowly, silently, but certainly. Because when you bless someone from a pure place, heaven stores that moment like treasure. And the return always comes. Sometimes in whispers, sometimes in waves. But it always finds its way back to the one who gave with love. Maybe you've had moments when you asked yourself, does it even matter? Maybe you've cried after helping someone who never said thank you. Maybe you've wondered if God saw what you did when no one else did. And this is your answer. Yes, it mattered. Yes, heaven saw it. Yes, God was watching. And yes, the blessing is already on its way. Because what you thought was just being polite was actually holy timing. What you thought was just a stranger was someone heaven sent into your life for a reason. What you thought was just another moment was a spiritual doorway being opened. You shifted something. You stopped a soul from slipping further into darkness. You gave light in the middle of someone else's quiet storm. And that light became a lifeline. You may not understand it now, but the doors that are about to open for you, the blessings that are about to pour out, the people that are about to show up in your life, none of it is random. It's connected to that one moment you thought didn't matter. That moment is echoing in the spirit. That moment is being multiplied. That moment is coming back with power. Because the truth is, you weren't just kind. You were chosen. You weren't just nice. You were sent. You didn't just help someone. You rescued a part of them that was giving up. And now, the world may still not understand who you are, but heaven does. And so does the person you helped. And now that they've seen you, they're not just thankful. They're planning. Quietly, carefully, intentionally. They're planning how to honor what you gave without even knowing it. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are not behind. You're right on time. And this blessing you're about to receive, this shift you're about to feel, it's not about luck. It's not about being in the right place at the right time. It's about being the right person with the right heart. It's about showing up with love when no one asked you to. It's about being a light when the world was dark. And that light is being rewarded. So if you've ever wondered if your goodness was worth it, this is your sign. It was. If you've ever questioned whether your heart still matters in this world, this is your proof. It does. And if you've ever doubted that heaven keeps track of what you've done, this is your confirmation. Heaven saw it all. And now, heaven is responding. Get ready. Because what's coming next is not just a blessing. It's a response to the love you gave when no one was watching. And when it arrives, you'll understand why your path felt slow, why your journey was quiet, and why you had to keep walking with faith. It was all leading to this. It was all building something sacred. You were never just another person in the crowd. You were the miracle someone didn't know how to ask for. And now, everything is about to change because of one quiet act of love that never stopped echoing. You were the only one who didn't treat them like a price tag, and that changed everything. In a world where most people see others as opportunities to gain something, you stood out. You didn't look at people for what they could give you, you saw their soul. You didn't offer kindness to get something back. You gave because your heart is pure. And someone who was used to being treated like a resource felt that. They'd spent years surrounded by people who smiled only when they wanted something, who said kind words with secret motives. But you didn't come with an angle. You came with peace. And that peace stayed with them. You didn't try to control the room or impress anyone. While others tried to position themselves like pieces on a board, you just moved gently like water. And that stillness touched someone deeply. Your sincerity spoke louder than any speech ever could. You reminded someone that kindness and honesty still exist. You didn't dress up your goodness. You just let it shine quietly. And it was that quiet strength that reached them in ways nothing else had. They were waiting for the moment you'd ask for something, but you didn't. And that silence echoed inside them, not in confusion, but in awe. Because for once, they were simply seen, not used, and they never forgot it. Maybe others didn't understand you. Maybe they called you too soft, too forgiving. But heaven never saw you that way. Every time you chose love instead of pride, patience instead of anger, God saw it. Every time you stayed true when you were tempted to compromise, every time you were kind when it cost you, heaven remembered. You were being tested in quiet ways. And you passed. You were consistent when no one clapped. You stayed real even when no one watched. And now, the right eyes, powerful eyes, have seen enough. A door is opening that you didn't chase. You didn't ask for it. But it's opening anyway, because you were faithful. Someone tried to forget you, but your energy wouldn't leave. You didn't beg to be remembered. You didn't follow up. You just left a presence so honest and true that it lingered. You became a sacred echo in their life. You reminded them of something real. And now, they find themselves returning, not because you chased them, but because your stillness left a crack in their noise. They haven't found that feeling anywhere else, and they can't forget it. Now, everything is turning. The reward that's coming isn't quiet. It's loud, clear, undeniable. not for pride, but for truth. The same world that overlooked you is about to watch you be elevated. The same people who didn't see your value are about to witness your rise. This is more than success. It's divine compensation. Every tear you cried in silence, every kind act that felt ignored, is now becoming part of a great return. This isn't just a blessing. It's justice, restoration, a sign that heaven never forgot you. You're not just being helped, you're being placed. Not because you shouted, but because you endured. Not because you played games, but because you walked in truth. And now, the opportunities, the people, the favor coming to you, they're not random. They're designed just for you, for your heart, for your calling, for your legacy. You are always carrying wealth, not in money, but in spirit. You are always chosen, not because of how loud you were, but because of how faithful you stayed. Now the world is going to see it, not because you demanded attention, but because heaven has decided it's time. The person they tried to ignore is the one they can't stop watching now. And it's not because you changed to fit the world. It's because you stayed true and let the world catch up. You were never behind. You were being prepared. And now, you're not just stepping into blessings. You're stepping into destiny. You were always the one. And now, everyone will know.